So now I'm very pleased to introduce the president and CEO of YAF and the director of the EdLaw Project, Marlise Spaniard, who will introduce our amazing keynote speaker tonight. Marlise.
Hello. What a beautiful night. We have this perfect weather. We have this wonderful turnout. It's so lovely to see you. I've given so many hugs tonight. Everywhere I look is somebody I know and a friend and people that have been doing this work for years. And I'm so grateful you're all here. Thank you. Throwing a big event is quite an undertaking. But every year, in the trusted hands of Michelle, our executive director, and Jackie, our operations and development coordinator, they make an absolutely gorgeous evening. And I just get to show up. And I'm so lucky to have both of them on our team, and I'm just so grateful. So can we just give them a really nice applause? So I'm honored to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Reginald Dwayne Betts. Mr. Betts was only 16 years old when he was sentenced as an adult to 9 years at one of the most notorious maximum security prisons in Virginia, where he experienced solitary confinement, horrific conditions, and constant violence. Mr. Betts did not allow this experience to break his humanity, and instead emerged a poet, a scholar, and an advocate. Mr. Betts is a prolific writer. He's published 5 books, as well as many poems and essays. He has traveled the country as an advocate for changes to the criminal and juvenile legal systems. In 2016, he graduated from Yale Law School, and something I think this audience will appreciate, started his legal career as a public defender in Connecticut. He is the founder of Freedom Reads, a first-of-its-kind organization working to radically transform access to literature in prisons, a spokesperson for the Campaign for Youth Justice, and was appointed by President Barack Obama to the Coordinating Council of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. He is also featured in the upcoming May 15th issue of The New Yorker. Mr. Betts has received many awards. I started to write them all down, but literally it was like the whole thing, and I was like, he's not going to have any time to speak if I read this. So I'm going to direct you to the program, which has his full bio. Before I turn it over to him, I also want to make sure you all know that we have a number of Mr. Betts' books out in the lobby, and he will be staying after to sign the books. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Reginald Dwayne Betts.
I didn't realize how many people were here. I want to thank you guys for having me. It's a bit of an honor for a lot of reasons, but I should say that the committee who selected the speakers were responsible for my coming here. So if you have any complaints, you should address them to them. I also wanted to give a thank you to the people who are wearing blue shirts. I saw somebody, yeah, please. I saw somebody with an interesting ring, and I asked them about the ring, and moments later, I was reaching into my wallet, giving up my credit card. The people who run the credit card machine are really conscientious. They say, can you tell the person who this credit card belongs to come here in front of us with their driver's license and one additional form of ID. So I was told that I'm going to win this, that we are all winners, but I translate that in my head to that is my pink bike outside, don't touch it. I am particularly honored to be here because you hear these stories, and I listened to the mission statement for Freedom Reads, and I realized how wrong it is. Our mission is not to radically transform the access to literature in prison. Our mission is akin to producing the feelings that you heard from the people speaking today. And it wasn't just the people who had been in the system, it was the people who had worked in the system. To say that you started your career in 1980 and you still have joy and that you're standing beside the person who was your first boss, and that you have progressed so much that you are now that person's last boss. Now, you think that that's a knock on the person who was having his last job, but it's not actually. It means that he was willing to do this work for all of those years and see other people advance to the positions that he once held. I went to prison when I was 16. The number that I know that is most intimate to me, as intimate as my name, is 251534. And I think that what Freedom Reads is trying to do is to give people a means to equip what prison does to the spirit, and our choice is literature. But ultimately, I think what we're all trying to do is give people a story to walk away with from an experience that is richer and is more productive than the story that they had when they walk into that experience. The reality is that more public defenders care than any client can ever know. I once had a kid who I represented, was 15. He was locked up for robbing a woman with a BB gun. The woman said they locking too many of our black boys up, but he put a pistol in my face, and I know you say it was fake, and I probably agree, but he should be locked up for a very long time. Now, everybody in the audience is like, oh, they aghast at this notion that this kid should be locked up for a long time, but they don't live in that community where this black woman is like, I'm not supposed to be afraid of somebody who could be my son. I remember talking to this kid, and I said, did you do anything else like this in a time close to when that happened? And he said, no. I said, because the police are going to come at us with it, and we just need to know. And he said, no. The prosecutor said he actually confessed to robbing somebody else 2 blocks down the way. I said, he did not confess. I just talked to this young man. He told me he did not do it. I explicitly told him it's going to make me look bad if he says he didn't do it, and I say that that wasn't him. And I said, now look, caveat is they can't find the paperwork. I am certain this kid did not know what caveat means, and he thought it meant the lottery, because I did too. Until the prosecutor said, we have the paperwork. And this kid is probably saying how his public defenders didn't care about him because they kept pressing him, trying to get him to confess to something. And what the kid doesn't know is that we were scrambling, trying to produce a story that meant freedom no matter what it was that he had did. And a lot of times the efforts of people in this room can't be understood by their clients because as a client, you only see one lens. I think what's really powerful about the stories I've heard is that so many people working with YAF are working to show the young folks that they're working with more than just that one lens of legal representation. I said my state number was 251534, and that's only part of it. I should say that what landed me here is that I couldn't get a job. And so I applied for a fellowship I had no business getting. It was the Radcliffe Fellowship. They give it to 50 people each year. It's supposed to be for mid-career authors. Mid-career writers, you could be a public defender, you could be an artist, you could be a musician, you could be Musa when you get older. I knew this kid when he was 5. His mom, Gretchen, they welcomed me and my wife and our 2 children into the community, and he was so young that in my head he was 3. His mom was like, no, he was 5. I know all of those years. And to see him here today is this thing about the stories that we try to produce in the lives of other people. What drove me here is that because I've been to prison, I struggled to find my own story. And applying for that Radcliffe Fellowship was a Hail Mary, which is to say to young folks in this room that's thinking about what they're going to do tomorrow, they should not let what they did yesterday predict what they might do tomorrow. This moment is a sort of bittersweet. I remember Gretchen said that I had things to do, and that's why I left Massachusetts. But the reality is I left Massachusetts because I still couldn't get a job. I applied to work at universities that would later give me honorary degrees, but wouldn't give me an interview. I applied to 2 consecutive jobs here in Boston. One job, which was in Roxbury, they said that I couldn't have the job because I sounded too much like a professor. I was like, you've not been to prison. They say, I know, that's what surprises us. But we don't think you will connect to our children. You sound too much like a professor. What the fuck kind of shit is that? See, they said, you should have gave us a little bit more of that during your interview. The other job I applied for, I won't even air out the name of the institution, but the other job I applied for, I got the job, and they knew that I had a criminal record, and I was going to be tutoring kids after school. And they came back at me and said, it's taking a long time to process your criminal record, and school is going to start soon, so unfortunately we can't hire you. And I was like, but I confessed again, like 15 years after I committed my crime, to you of all of the crimes I committed. I even explained how I went to prison for those same crimes. I wrote a book about it. It's on Google. Like, I don't know what the background check is going to prove to you that it's true, but, and they were progressives. And I had to ask myself, what am I going to do? I convinced this woman to marry me, and we had not one but 2 children, which is twice the amount of Similac, if you know such things. It is twice the amount of child care. It's a woman here today. Our children went to the same daycare. It was a Spanish immersion school, and my fucking kid is now learning French. So that says how much that worked out. But it's a pleasure to see you, and it's a pleasure to remember that what drove us away wasn't that we didn't love the community that we were a part of, but that the community did not love me. And I thought, where can I go to be loved? Where can I go to be accepted? Where my 3 felonies and 3 no process felonies. And the thing is, no process doesn't matter in the real world, but it matters to lawyers. They want to know, how many charges with no process? Where could I go where I will be accepted despite that? I struggled with this question, and I decided to go to law school. Where else would I feel at home? Where people would understand that people make mistakes under the strangest conditions. And I say that part of the story because it frankly was at law school where I used to think that my job was to be a public defender. I thought that my job was to be on the front end and to help people not end up in prison. Now, my first job as a student was working in a clinic where we represented kids who were facing expulsion. And then after law school, and during the law school, I worked at the public defender's office in D.C., and then after law school, I worked in New Haven at the public defender's office, and I represented young people. I found that it was a huge struggle, and this is why I'm going to end with a thank you. I found that it was a huge struggle. It wasn't that I thought the kid didn't understand what I was doing for him, because even as he was lying to me, I would laugh at him, like, I know you kind of lying, you know? And some of my colleagues, they thought that you can't tell a client that he's lying to you. But I was like, but this kid is like my fucking son's age, and he's lying to me like I'm a dummy. Or the kid is like 22, and I'm 32, but I'm just not gonna sit here and let him lie to me and treat him with so little dignity that I like laugh and smile in his face when he is saying the most absurd thing. And then I realized that like the judge or the prosecutor would do something that I would find absolutely infuriating. I had a client who was a young woman who had a sort of abuse of a dog charge. Her dog had died. And she had 2 kids in diapers. And what I remember is the prosecutor said, I offer you 1 year suspended after 7 months. And he was looking at his paper as he said it. And I was like, I'm sorry? Do they have daycare in jail? I mean, is somebody going to pay her rent while she's in jail? What are you talking about? And that particular judge wouldn't budge, and they sent it to another judge who was a mother. And I thought this was going to seal the deal. And she said, okay, 1 year suspended after 2 months. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I was in chambers. At that moment, I wish that the other interviewer had heard this language because they would have hired me. I actually wasn't conscious of me saying that thing. I was so lost in this notion that like a judge, because if you do 2 months in prison, you lose your job, you lose your apartment, like you lose your children. And I just couldn't understand how I was in a conversation in a room with a bunch of adults, and I was supposed to pretend like this was a legitimate response to the accidental death of a dog. I just, and there was other circumstances around it as there always are, but I couldn't believe that that was the question. And my supervisor and attorney touched my leg and was like, I got the rest of this. And I was like, man, something must have went wrong. I don't know what happened. I went out and he came up to me later and explained to me generously how there were certain combinations of words that didn't belong around a judge's ears. So the last thing I'll say is what that taught me was one, we all show up in the ways that we can. And I ended up deciding that I couldn't be a public defender because I couldn't deal with the burden that it is. And I wish more people understood the kind of burden that it is. And I wish more people understood the passion that people who do it must bring to the work. Because you don't get the kind of praise that you should for supporting the people who are most vulnerable in our society. We talk about brain science a lot, but in 1996, they definitely did not believe that if you committed a crime at 16, you didn't have the intellectual capacity of Einstein. That's how they treated us when we went to court. You must have been a mastermind behind every robbery that happened in the last 7 years. Give it all up. And so you guys do this work without expecting to ever be compared to Johnny Cochran. That was a first. That was good. I don't even know how you know who Johnny Cochran is, but that was good. So anyway, I want to thank everybody in this room. It is really exceptional work. And I also want to say it was an honor, like me and Catherine Hall-Page were so disrespectful because I got so excited that she was a mystery writer, and we were talking about books. And my 11-year-old kid is reading a murder mystery, and this is like the first adult book that he read. And it reminds me that the power of books and of education in moments like this is that it allows you to process things and think about things in a way that you don't have access to without those books. And you are sincerely prolific. I am just a scribbler of words every once in a while. Thank you.